Hello, my name is David Kim. I'm 31. I work as a freelance carpenter, mostly custom furniture pieces for people who want something unique in their homes. I live in a shared house with my roommate Stephen, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had my life pretty well figured out. That was before his sister Patricia moved in. She closed the curtain slowly, her fingers trailing along the fabric as the last sliver of afternoon light disappeared from the living room. The house fell into that golden twilight that makes everything feel suspended between day and night. Patricia turned to face me, her dark eyes holding mine with an intensity that made my chest tight. "I've waited long enough," she said. "But let me back up. Let me tell you how we got to that moment, because it didn't happen overnight. Nothing real ever does." 3 months earlier, Stephen was pacing around our kitchen like a caged animal, running his hands through his hair, the way he always did when he was stressed about something. I was sanding down a maple coffee table I'd been working on, the wood shavings curling away under my hands in long, satisfying strips. "She's going through a divorce," Stephen said for the third time. "It's messy. She needs somewhere to stay while she figures things out." I looked up from my work. "How long are we talking about?" "I don't know. A few months, maybe. She's got money saved up. She can help with rent and groceries. And she's clean, organized. You won't even know she's here." That turned out to be completely wrong. Patricia Alvarez arrived on a Tuesday morning with 2 suitcases and a box of books. She was 43 years old, 8 years older than Stephen, 12 years older than me. She had the kind of presence that filled a room without trying, the kind of quiet confidence that comes from having lived through things and come out stronger. She was beautiful, but not in the way that demands attention. Her beauty was subtle, earned, lines around her eyes that spoke of laughter and worry in equal measure. Hands that moved with purpose, whether she was making coffee or arranging her books on the shelf Stephen had cleared for her. "You must be David," she said when Stephen introduced us. Her handshake was firm, her smile genuine but reserved. "Thank you for letting me crash here. I promise I'll stay out of your way." I told her it was no problem, that she was welcome as long as she needed. Standard roommate politeness. But even then, something in the way she looked at me, really looked at me, made me feel like she was seeing something I didn't even know was there. The first week, she kept her promise. I barely saw her except in passing. She left early for her job at the marketing firm downtown, came home after I'd usually finished work for the day. We'd nod, exchange pleasantries, nothing more. But the second week, things started to shift. I was in the garage workshop I'd set up, working on a dining room set for a client, when Patricia appeared in the doorway. She was wearing jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look younger and older at the same time. "Sorry to bother you," she said. "Stephen said you might be able to help me with something." She had a small wooden jewelry box, something that looked like it had been passed down through generations. The hinges were loose. The lid wouldn't close properly. "My grandmother's," she explained, setting it carefully on my workbench. "It's not worth much money, but it's worth everything," I finished. She smiled and I felt something warm settle in my chest. I examined the box, running my fingers over the worn wood, feeling where the joints had loosened with age. "This is beautiful work, hand-dovetailed corners. Someone who knew what they were doing made this. Can you fix it?" "Absolutely. It'll take a few days, but I can make it good as new." She watched me work for a few minutes, asking questions about the wood, the techniques, the tools I was using. Most people get bored quickly when I start talking about carpentry, but Patricia listened with genuine interest. She asked smart questions, made connections I wouldn't have expected. "You really love this," she observed. "I do. There's something about taking raw wood and turning it into something useful, something beautiful. It feels honest." She nodded like she understood exactly what I meant. That became our routine. She'd stop by the workshop after work, bringing me a beer or a cup of coffee, and we'd talk while I worked. Sometimes about the piece I was making, sometimes about her day, sometimes about nothing important at all. I learned that she'd been married for 15 years to a man who'd gradually stopped seeing her as anything more than a convenience, that she'd spent so long being what other people needed her to be that she'd almost forgotten who she was underneath all of that. "I used to paint," she told me one evening, watching me apply stain to a bookshelf. "Watercolors mostly. Landscapes, some portraits. I wasn't bad at it. What happened? Life, I guess. Marriage, career, all the things that seemed more important at the time." She was quiet for a moment. I keep thinking I should start again, but it's been so long. What if I've lost it? What if you haven't? She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I felt that same electric awareness I'd been trying to ignore for weeks. The jewelry box took me longer than it should have. I could have fixed it in 2 days, but I stretched it out to a week, finding excuses to make small improvements, to add tiny details that weren't necessary but made the piece more beautiful. I told myself I was being thorough, professional. Really, I just wasn't ready to give up those evening conversations. When I finally finished it, Patricia held the box in her hands like it was made of spun glass. She opened and closed the lid several times, testing the smooth action of the repaired hinges. "It's perfect," she said. "Better than perfect. It's like new, but it still feels like itself, you know? That's the goal. Restore without losing the character." She looked up at me. "Is that what you're doing with me too?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "These conversations, the way you listen, the way you see things, it feels like you're helping me remember who I used to be, before everything got so complicated." I didn't know what to say to that. The air between us felt charged, full of possibilities and dangers in equal measure. "Patricia, I know," she said quickly. "I know this is complicated. I know I'm older. I know I'm your roommate's sister. I know I'm technically still married even though it's over in every way that matters. I know all the reasons this doesn't make sense. Then why are we talking about it? Because sometimes the things that don't make sense are the only things that do." We stood there in the workshop, surrounded by sawdust and the smell of wood stain, looking at each other across a distance that felt both enormous and negligible. "I should go," she said finally. "Yeah," I agreed, but neither of us moved. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what was happening. Patricia was beautiful, intelligent, kind. She was also in the middle of a divorce, living in my house, and the sister of one of my closest friends. Every rational part of my brain told me to keep my distance, to treat her with friendly respect and nothing more. But there was another part, a part that had been growing stronger with every conversation, that whispered about the way she laughed at my terrible jokes, the way she touched my arm when she was making a point, the way she looked at my work like it mattered. If you're enjoying this story, hype this video. I'd love to know I'm not alone in feeling like life sometimes throws you curveballs that don't make logical sense, but feel more real than anything else. The next few weeks were a careful dance. We maintained the pretense of casual friendliness when Stephen was around, but when it was just us, the conversations grew deeper, more personal. She started bringing her laptop to the workshop, working on her marketing projects while I built furniture. The companionable silence felt as natural as breathing. One evening, she showed up with a small canvas and a set of watercolors. "I thought I might try painting again," she said almost shyly. "Would it be okay if I set up in the corner? I promise I won't get in your way." "Of course, so I'd love to see what you create." Watching Patricia paint was like watching someone come back to life. Her whole posture changed when she held the brush, became more relaxed, more herself. She started with simple exercises, color washes, and basic shapes. But within a week, she was working on a landscape of the view from our back porch. "It's rusty," she said, frowning at the canvas. "It's beautiful," I corrected. And it was. There was something raw and honest about her work, an emotional quality that technical perfection couldn't match. We fell into a rhythm. She'd paint, I'd work on whatever project I had going. We'd talk, or not talk, as the mood struck us. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me work with an expression I couldn't quite read. Sometimes she'd catch me watching her paint, and we'd share a smile that felt like a secret. Stephen noticed the change in his sister. "She seems happier," he mentioned one morning over coffee. "More like her old self. I think staying here is good for her." "She's easy to have around," I said, which was both completely true and completely inadequate. "I'm glad you two get along. I was worried it might be weird, you know? Age difference and all that." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Age difference? Well, yeah. She's in her 40s. You're barely 30. Different life stages, different perspectives. But you seem to connect on some level. It's nice." Stephen had no idea how much we connected, how Patricia had started lingering in the workshop later and later, until sometimes we'd realize it was past midnight and we'd been talking for hours. How she'd started making dinner for both of us when Stephen worked late, and we'd eat by candlelight not because it was romantic, but because the overhead light in the dining room was too harsh. How one night, when she was painting and I was sanding a particularly stubborn piece of oak, she'd started humming, just quietly under her breath, some song I didn't recognize. But her voice was beautiful, and the sound of it mixed with the rhythm of my sandpaper created something that felt like music. "You have a beautiful voice," I said when she stopped. She blushed. "I used to sing. In college, I was in a choir. Another thing I gave up." "Why do we do that? Give up the things that make us happy? Because we think we have to. Because we think being practical is more important than being alive." That night, after she'd gone to bed, I stayed in the workshop thinking about what she'd said, about being practical versus being alive. I'd been practical my whole life, learned a trade, saved money, made sensible decisions. But sitting there surrounded by the furniture I'd made, I realized that carpentry was the one place where I let myself be truly alive, where I created something beautiful instead of just functional. And Patricia was becoming another place where I felt that same aliveness. The shift happened gradually, then all at once. The casual touches became more frequent, more lingering. Her hand on my shoulder when she looked at my work, my fingers brushing hers when I handed her a cup of coffee. The space between us seemed to shrink a little more each day. One rainy Thursday evening, Patricia was painting while I worked on a rocking chair for a client's nursery. The rain drummed against the garage door, creating a cozy cocoon around us. She was working on a new piece, something abstract this time, all flowing blues and greens. "What inspired this one?" I asked during a break. She set down her brush and looked at the canvas thoughtfully. "It's hard to explain. It's like, you know how sometimes you feel something but you can't put it into words? This is what that feeling looks like to me." I moved closer to get a better look at the painting. Standing behind her, I could smell her shampoo, something light and floral. I could see the concentration in the set of her shoulders, the delicate way she held the brush. "It's beautiful," I said, and my voice came out rougher than I'd intended. She turned to look at me, and suddenly we were very close. Close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes, close enough to count the freckles across her nose that her makeup usually hid. "David," she said softly. "I know," I said. "I know this is complicated. Do you ever think about what would happen if we stopped caring about complicated?" Before I could answer, we heard Stephen's car in the driveway. Patricia stepped back quickly, turning to clean her brushes with shaking hands. I busied myself organizing tools that didn't need organizing. Stephen came in shaking rain from his jacket. "Wow, it's really coming down out there. How are you two holding up?" "Just fine," Patricia said, her voice carefully normal. "David's been keeping me company." "Good, good. I'm going to grab a shower and then maybe we can all watch a movie or something." After he left, Patricia and I didn't look at each other directly. The moment had passed, but something had changed. There was an acknowledgement now, a recognition of what was building between us. "I should clean up," she said. "Yeah, me too." But neither of us moved for a long moment. The next morning, Patricia's divorce papers arrived. I was in the kitchen making coffee when she opened the envelope, her face going through a series of emotions I couldn't quite read. "It's final," she said simply. "As of yesterday, I'm officially single for the first time in 15 years. How do you feel about that?" She was quiet for a long time, staring at the papers in her hands. Relieved, scared, free. Like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff, and I can't decide if I want to fly or run back to safety. What does your heart tell you?" She looked up at me then, and I saw my own feelings reflected in her eyes. "It tells me to jump." That weekend, Stephen went out of town to visit friends. Patricia and I found ourselves alone in the house for the first time since she'd moved in. The awareness of it hung between us like a question we weren't sure we were ready to answer. Saturday morning, I was working in the garage when Patricia appeared with 2 cups of coffee and a serious expression. "We need to talk," she said. I set down my tools and accepted the coffee, my heart beating faster than it should have been. "I've been thinking about what you asked me," she said, "about what would happen if we stopped caring about complicated. And, and I think I'm tired of being careful. I'm tired of making decisions based on what other people might think or what makes the most sense on paper. I'm 43 years old and I feel like I'm just starting to remember who I am." She moved closer, setting her coffee cup on the workbench. "I know this doesn't make sense," she continued. "I know I'm older. I know I just got divorced. I know you're Stephen's friend and I'm his sister. I know all the reasons this is a bad idea. But when I'm with you, I feel more like myself than I have in years. When you look at my paintings, I see them through your eyes and they're beautiful. When you talk about your work, I remember what it feels like to be passionate about something. You make me want to be brave. I reached out and touched her face, my thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. You are brave. You left a marriage that wasn't working. You're starting over. You're painting again. I want to start over with you. The words hung in the air between us, honest and vulnerable and terrifying. Patricia, I need you to know something. This isn't just attraction for me. This isn't just because you're beautiful or because you're here. You've changed something in me. Made me think about what I want from life beyond just getting by. What do you want? I want to build something real with you, something that lasts. I want to watch you paint and listen to you sing and learn everything there is to know about who you are when you're not trying to be what someone else needs. She smiled then, the first completely unguarded smile I'd seen from her. I want that too. We kissed then, finally, and it felt like coming home and setting off on an adventure at the same time. Her lips were soft and she tasted like coffee and possibility. When we broke apart, she rested her forehead against mine. What do we do about Stephen? She asked. We tell him the truth. Maybe not today, but soon. He deserves to know, and I think he'll understand. He wants you to be happy. And if he doesn't understand, then we figure it out together. That afternoon, we walked to the farmer's market downtown, not holding hands but walking close enough that our shoulders brushed with each step. Patricia bought ingredients for dinner. I bought flowers for the table. It felt domestic and natural and right. We cooked together that evening, moving around each other in the kitchen like we'd been doing it for years. Patricia made pasta with fresh vegetables from the market. I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. Is this a special occasion? She asked when she saw the label. The most special, I said. We ate by candlelight, talking about everything and nothing. Her childhood, my dreams for expanding the furniture business, places we wanted to travel, books we'd read, movies that made us cry. The conversation flowed like water, natural and easy. After dinner, we moved to the living room. Patricia curled up next to me on the couch, her head on my shoulder, and we watched the sun set through the windows. I keep waiting for this to feel wrong, she said quietly. Does it? No, it feels like the first right thing I've done in a very long time. We stayed like that until late, just holding each other and talking quietly. When Patricia finally said she should go to bed, I walked her to her room like a teenager with a first crush. Good night, David. Good night, Patricia. But she didn't go inside right away. Instead, she turned back to me. Thank you, she said. For what? For seeing me. For helping me remember who I am. Thank you for letting me. Sunday morning, we had breakfast together and read the paper like an old married couple. Patricia painted while I worked on refinishing an antique dresser. Everything felt settled and right, like we'd found our rhythm. That evening, Stephen called to say he'd be home late Monday instead of Sunday night. Patricia and I looked at each other across the dinner table, both thinking the same thing. One more night. We spent the evening on the back porch, Patricia sketching while I read. The early autumn air was cool but not cold, perfect for sitting outside with a blanket and a glass of wine. David, Patricia said, looking up from her sketchbook. Yeah? I love you. The words were simple, honest, without drama or fanfare. Just a statement of fact, like saying the sky was blue or water was wet. I love you too, I said, and meant it completely. Monday came too soon. Stephen returned in good spirits, full of stories from his weekend. Patricia and I fell back into our careful dance of casual friendliness. But it was harder now. Every glance felt loaded, every accidental touch electric. That evening, after Stephen had gone to bed, Patricia found me in the workshop. This is torture, she said without preamble. I know. We have to tell him. I know. Wekenimund. I set down the piece I was sanding. Soon. This week. We can't keep pretending nothing's changed. She nodded, then surprised me by moving closer and kissing me softly. I needed to do that, she said, to remind myself this is real. It's real, I confirmed. Whatever happens with Stephen, whatever complications come up, this is real. We told Stephen on Thursday night. Patricia cooked his favorite meal, I bought his favorite beer, and we sat him down in the living room like parents about to explain where babies come from. There's something we need to tell you, Patricia began. Stephen looked between us, and I saw the moment when understanding dawned on his face. Oh, he said. Oh, we didn't plan this, I said quickly. It just happened. But it's serious, Stephen. This isn't casual for either of us. Stephen was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then he looked at his sister. Are you happier? He asked. Happier than I've been in years, she said honestly. He turned to me. Are you going to hurt her? Not if I can help it. I love her, Stephen. Another long pause, then Stephen smiled. Well, this is weird, he said, but also kind of perfect. You're both good people. You both deserve to be happy. And honestly, I've never seen Patricia look the way she looks when she talks about you. Really? Patricia asked, sounding younger than her 43 years. Really, you light up. It's nice to see. The relief was overwhelming. We'd been prepared for anger, confusion, demands that we choose between our relationship and our friendship with Stephen. Instead, we got acceptance and support. There are going to be rules, Stephen said with mock seriousness. No making out in common areas. No fighting where I have to pick sides. And if you break up, you both have to move out, because I'm not dealing with that drama. Deal, Patricia and I said in unison. That night, for the first time, Patricia didn't go to her own room. She came to mine, and we lay in bed talking quietly until we fell asleep in each other's arms. The next few weeks were a period of adjustment for all of us. Patricia and I were learning how to be a couple. Stephen was learning how to live with his best friend dating his sister. There were awkward moments, sure, but mostly it felt natural. Patricia started spending more time in the workshop, painting while I worked. She'd set up a proper easel in the corner, organized her supplies in a way that made the space feel shared. Sometimes I'd look up from whatever I was building to find her watching me work, and she'd smile and go back to her canvas. What are you painting now? I asked one evening, trying to peek over her shoulder. It's a surprise, she said, angling the easel away from me. You'll see when it's finished. I don't like surprises. You'll like this one. She was right. When she finally showed me the finished piece, I understood why she'd been so secretive. It was a painting of me in the workshop, focused on a piece of wood, completely absorbed in my work. But she'd captured something in my expression that I didn't even know was there. A kind of contentment and purpose that made me look like the person I'd always wanted to be. Is that how you see me? I asked, staring at the painting. That's exactly how I see you. That's the man I fell in love with. I kissed her then, there in the workshop, surrounded by sawdust and paint fumes, and it felt like a promise. 3 months after Patricia had moved in as Stephen's sister going through a divorce, she was something entirely different. She was my partner, my best friend, the person who made me want to be better than I was. We talked about the future carefully and honestly. Patricia's divorce settlement had left her financially stable, and she was considering leaving her marketing job to freelance so she could focus more on her art. I was getting more commissions than I could handle, enough to think about expanding the business, maybe renting proper workshop space. We could get our own place, Patricia said one evening as we lay in bed. A house with a big garage for your workshop and good light for painting? Is that what you want? I want whatever comes next, as long as it's with you. But we weren't there yet. We were still in the careful early stages, still learning each other's rhythms and needs, still figuring out how to blend two lives that had been separate for so long. Which brings me back to that Tuesday afternoon, 3 months after Patricia first walked into our house with 2 suitcases and a box of books. I was in the living room reading a book about furniture restoration techniques when Patricia came home from work. She looked tired but happy, the way she always did after a good day at the office. How was your day? I asked, setting down my book. Good. Productive. I finished the campaign for that new restaurant downtown. She sat down next to me on the couch, curling her legs under her. How about you? Get much done on the dining room set? Made good progress. Should have it finished by the weekend. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows and warming the room. Patricia looked thoughtful, like she was working up to saying something. David, she said finally. Yeah? She stood up and walked to the windows, her movements deliberate and graceful. The light caught in her dark hair, making it shine like silk. She closed the curtain slowly, her fingers trailing along the fabric as the last sliver of afternoon light disappeared from the living room. The house fell into that golden twilight that makes everything feel suspended between day and night. Patricia turned to face me, her dark eyes holding mine with an intensity that made my chest tight. I've waited long enough, she said. I knew what she meant without her having to explain. We'd been careful, respectful, taking things slow out of consideration for the complicated nature of our situation. But there comes a point when careful becomes a barrier to real intimacy, when taking things slow starts to feel like holding back. Are you sure? I asked, standing up to face her. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I crossed the room to her, taking her hands in mine. They were warm and steady like the rest of her. I love you, Patricia Alvarez. I love you too, David Kim. We kissed then, soft and sure, and it felt like sealing a promise we'd been making to each other for months without words. Later, as we lay together in the golden twilight of the living room, Patricia traced patterns on my chest with her fingertip. No regrets, she asked quietly. None. You. Only that we waited so long. I laughed softly. We had to wait. We had to be sure. Are you sure now? I looked down at her, at this woman who had walked into my life and changed everything about how I saw the world and my place in it. I'm sure that I want to build a life with you. I'm sure that you make me better than I am alone. I'm sure that whatever comes next, I want to face it together. She smiled, that completely unguarded smile that I'd fallen in love with. Then let's build something beautiful, she said. Outside, the sun finished setting and the world grew quiet. Inside, we held each other and planned a future that neither of us could have imagined 6 months ago. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never see coming, the ones that don't make sense on paper but feel more real than anything else. Sometimes you have to close the curtains on one chapter of your life to begin another. Sometimes you have to stop waiting and start living. Sometimes the woman who changes everything is the one you least expect, in the place you least expect to find her. And sometimes when you're brave enough to jump off that cliff, you discover you can fly.